Hey, Mickey.
Hey, Bob.
Ooh, that looks real. Is that a real black?
Well,
did you get into an altercation?
I was at the prestigious Vanity Fair party in my glamorous Hollywood life, Bob, and
I hope you didn't say anything about Jada.
I was in the 7th room, and you're in the 7th room. You're alone with Will Smith, and he came up and smacked me, and it was weird because I could tell it was because I voted for Trump, and I'm just sick of it. I'm tired of being beaten up for voting for Trump. I'm giving up. I think they're right. I was led astray by contrarianism, cheap contrarianism of the New Republican Michael Kinsley. And, you know, the New York Times editorial board, they're very smart people. You should just do what they say. And there's an arc of history. You can't fight the arc. The arc is going where the arc is going. And like I was a big welfare reform supporter. And I look at the chart of what happened to child poverty after welfare reform. And you'll notice that although it goes up and down, it fell to record lows. It fell by 25% after, despite the recession, after welfare reform. Oh, well, never mind. April Fools.
Oh, Mickey, you're such a kidder. You kidder, you. Now, is that the eye stuff looks
You didn't actually
convincing.
fall for that. You didn't actually fall
No,
for
the eye
that.
doesn't look bad. I mean, let me see. It looks bad. That's my point. It looks like you actually got maybe beat up, but you didn't, huh?
No, I'm actually a genius at makeup, Bob.
That's impressive.
If you go on the web and search for how to give yourself a black eye with makeup, there's a nice woman who explains it all to you. Actually, it should have a little more yellow in it.
You could get a job in Hollywood.
But anyway, so I now know how to give myself a black eye with makeup.
So you still are a Trump supporter then? That was a joke.
No, I'm not. I voted for Trump. That's all I did. And I'm yes, I get beat up all the time, but I was wrong. I mean, I voted for Trump because I thought the Democrats would take the Congress in a big way, and they didn't. So if I knew what I knew now, I don't know what I would do. Call me in 6 months after Congress has failed or not failed to pass the refundable child tax credit and create a new underclass.
So you want to hear another April Fool's opening? This is from the podcast Russians with Attitude. Wait, let me see if this works. It probably won't because this was not planned.
Hello, welcome to Russians with Attitude. Breaking news: Russia has captured Kiev. A special military operation is going according to plan. April's Fool's Day. 2 Ukrainian helicopters.
April's Fool's Day.
April's Fool's Day. Well, they got that over with quickly.
Yep. But I gotta say, they're a little better at getting on stage and off stage in a compressed period of time than some people I know. This is not some kind of, I'm not subtweeting.
I ended that spiel pretty quickly, I thought.
Yeah, you did. No, it was, I mean, we didn't, I was interested. I'm always interested in hearing about welfare reform.
You didn't fall for it for a minute, right?
No, actually, it's not a bad black eye. I don't think I can do that well. It's not a bad black eye. I've seen worse.
People are still talking about the black eye. And
I have Will Smith and Chris Rock.
I have 4 takes on it. 4, count them 4.
Okay.
First, it vindicates the Robert Wright view of. It perfectly illustrates the Robert Wright view of the rule of law versus the rule of equities. I mean, you could say Chris Rock's joke was tasteless, but Will Smith clearly violated an internationally recognized boundary in smacking him, just as Russia recognized an internationally
illegally recognized.
I'm joking, but yes. Just as Russia violated an international boundary in invading Ukraine. So
I've actually written this piece, by the way. It's in my newsletter. It sounds like you didn't manage to come across it, and so
no, I read it. Is that the take that you said? If we didn't agree, it was better. We should settle it outside like men.
That was the one. I
did read it, but it passed through my brain like Olestra, and I forgot about it.
It's been a while since I've heard about Alestra, but what's your second
take? So there's
take?
that one. The second take is Justin Timberlake. That is the comparison.
The costume reveal incident at the Super Bowl with Janet Jackson.
Yeah, it's a terrible role model for America's youth and for anybody who might harbor thoughts of racism. It's exactly the stereotype confirming action that Black Americans should not want, and that kids should not in any way venerate or laud. So it's a complete fucking disaster, and that is dawning on people, and Will Smith is getting a pile of shit.
Yeah, well, okay, hold on. That is the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar take. He was the first one that I saw do it in writing in a newsletter. I think it may even be on Substack, but he made those points about, reinforcing stereotypes.
Did he say Justin Timberlake?
Well, no, but that doesn't really fit. I mean, with Justin Timberlake, he was a white guy.
Well, but he was reinforcing the idea that it's okay to rip off women's garments, and Will Smith is reinforcing the idea that it's okay to punch people in the face.
Yeah. So for younger viewers,
want to do every now and then.
It's been a while. It's been longer than you and I realized. So this was a halftime show at the Super Bowl. Justin Timberlake, this wasn't really part of the act, but he and Janet Jackson, I guess, had prearranged it, and he pulls off her clothing, and she had, what was the deal? She had, not enough on. Not enough.
She had some gold star over her nipple,
a strategically placed gold star or something. And the funny thing is that liberals pretty much unanimously, people on the left pretty much unanimously came out in defense of kind of the two of them and against, conservative stick in the muds who opposed it. But my line at the time, I think I was kind of ahead of the time, is I said this was an act of stylized sexual aggression by a male on a female. It definitely was that. It definitely was forcible disrobing. And but honestly, nobody on the left was saying that back then. It was all like laughing at people who want speech codes at Super Bowl halftime performances or something.
Well, people on the left are supporting Will Smith too. I mean, not all of them.
I don't think it's that clear cut, but it's an interesting. I had mentioned this to you when we talked earlier in the week about the extent to which this does align with the cancel culture argument. There are some natural correspondences, obviously, like shouldn't Chris Rock be able to say what he wants without being, deplatformed or slapped in the face? And do you sense a fair amount of correspondence? I mean, certainly
it's fading.
Well, certainly the IDW types and free speech crusaders are on Chris Rock's side, as are stand-up comedians, and there tends to be overlap between those two anyway. But
just in general, Will Smith is losing the PR war. He's only begun to feel the hurt that he's going to feel. I think he's damaged his career. I mean, one tends to come back from things faster these days than before. But his whole shtick is he was a good guy who you wanted to root for. He was sort of an unblemished hero, and he now has a bunch of blemishes. And I don't think he's going to go thug. I mean, one sort of career move would be to, this dirties up his image in a good way. It'll create more appeal. I don't think he doesn't make millions and millions of dollars per movie on the basis of that. So I think he's he's going to have to grovel for a few more months.
Well, I mean, we'll see what the Academy does. It sounds like the Academy is going to do something. I think it's true that since it happened, I mean, moments after the end of the ceremony, he seemed like he had emerged unscathed. They gave him a standing ovation for a kind of a strange acceptance speech. And he was, partying famously now at the Vanity Fair party. But ever since then, the tide has seemed to move against him.
A beer summit with Chris Rock would save him.
Well, I think Chris Rock, first of all, he handled it about as well as you can handle it, as everyone has said. Secondly, I saw an interview. It's consistent with his philosophy to kind of absorb it stoically. I saw an interview he had done years ago where he said there was a bully in school who had bullied him, and one day, after Chris Rock is a star, he sees this guy is a security guard, at his show. And he's like, you know, he could get him fired. He could retaliate,
Right.
but he's like, fine with it. He's like, and he does this whole speech about when people hate, what is it? Not when people hate you, kiss them. When they do something, kiss them. It's apparently there's some character in Bugs Bunny cartoon who used to do something like this. Anyway, he had a whole philosophy about turning the other cheek. And that's what he did. I also think now to look at what he's doing a little more cynically, I actually think he's wise to not now joke about, I mean, if he wants to maximize the retaliation against Will Smith, he is wise not to joke about it in his comedy act. You know, he's done one act since then. He didn't joke about it. He made a point of just saying, no, I'm still processing it, because I think if he starts turning it into kind of a lighthearted thing, the Academy will crack down less harshly on Will Smith. That's my theory. So he's kind of, Chris Rock has played this perfectly. When it first happened, I thought, man, I'm not sure which one of those I'd rather be in terms of, you know, the rest of my career. But now it seems like Chris Rock is the clear winner.
Well, I agree. There is still a mystery, which is the missing 3 seconds or so where Jada Pinkett whispers something to Will Smith that causes him to,
does she whisper?
Immediately proceed. That's the rumor. This footage hasn't been seen, but we assume it exists, and the Academy
it must exist because that camera was set. They just cut away from it.
Yeah. So what did she say? Was it some weird Scientology command? You know that there's Scientology adjacent.
I learned that recently.
So there's that mystery. So that may change things. As my friend Richard Rushfield, who is pretty left, and he is definitely anti Will Smith. He runs a website called The Ankler, co-runs it, and he had one take that I hadn't heard, which is one of the. I doubt it's a major factor, but Will's, they gave him the standing ovation. He got to dance the night away at parties, but he represented the resentment of the Hollywood elite at all the people like the press and comedians who were making fun of them. So he was acting out the fantasies of all the A-list actors and actresses who were there in attendance, who always want to smack somebody who's giving them grief, and their agents say, "Oh no, you can't." Mm-hmm. And Will Smith went ahead and did it. So that is the minor factor, but it was an interesting.
But addition. How many people are coming out in support of Will Smith? I haven't heard much of that. I mean, there's a lot of people coming out against him and a lot of people staying quiet, but I haven't.
That's true. There was that conversation with 50 Cent and Will Smith that seemed inconclusive.
You mean the one, the DM?
Yeah.
The one I told you I saw on Twitter?
Did you tell me? Somebody told me that. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was all before this. That was before this. Oh. It's I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
Now it was a bad, it was a B- Don Rickles joke that was a little meaner than I think you should be. I'd like to see a list of cruelest jokes at the Academy Awards. I doubt it would be at the very top. The one poll I saw, the country was about split 50-50, at least a day or two after it. Right. But I suspect that half of them who heard that she had a disease think it's a more serious disease than it is. I mean, it's not nothing. I'm not trivializing it, but they might think she's in chemo or something.
I did see tweeters on the right. Some say, of course, every man defends his woman. Blah blah blah. These are the manly virtues, and so there's some of that.
Yeah.
And the one place it was, they seemed to be more on Will Smith's side was in the South, and I assume that's because of honor culture. Speaking of honor culture, did you see OJ's tweet?
I saw the little video of himself he did commenting on it.
Is it a video? I didn't see a video. I just saw a tweet. OJ Simpson, he was wrong, but I understand the sentiment.
I think that was a summary of his little. He did a little selfie video.
And if you remember Chris Rock's OJ routine. This is an incredibly subtle. Brian Butler pointed this out. It's an incredibly subtle and disturbing troll on OJ's part, because Chris Rock did this routine where, how do you like it if, you think Ron Goldman just came with his does every waiter return gloves personally to the house? You think maybe, OJ thought that there was something sexual going on, and then Ron Goldman is driving around in the Ferrari that he bought for Nicole. And the punchline, the end line anyway, of the Chris Rock routine is, I'm not saying he should have done it. I'm saying I understand.
Oh, you're kidding.
And so OJ may not have liked that. So he's getting back at Chris Rock by saying, what he did was wrong, but I understand punching Chris Rock.
That is subtle.
It's pretty damn subtle and something evil, something.
So what's your prediction on, well, go ahead.
Good. No, you got it.
What's your prediction on the Academy, what the Academy will do, assuming they do something?
They'll do something in between expelling him and
suspend him.
Yeah. Although they did expel somebody. The people they expelled have done serious things like Harvey Weinstein, except for one person who
the very first expulsion, I can tell you, was guilty of taking the copies of the movies they sent the people voting on the movies and giving bootleg copies to friends.
I was just going to say but there is this one guy who got kicked out for giving away the screeners. Yeah,
he was the first person ever kicked out, I think.
Well, this was worse than the giving away the screeners, although maybe not from the Academy's point of view.
The rest have been sexual predators. The other three or four people expelled. I don't think they'll expel him, but I would. So they could suspend him for 3, 4, 5 years, during which time I guess and maybe say he's not eligible for awards. I don't think that's entailed in suspending him.
Anyway, what matters is public opinion and what happens to his career. And I think he's losing there. So I think all's right in the world. Like the Ukraine war, it is going to unite Americans.
I heard that
this talk of civil war.
I heard that Apple has already postponed that there's something he's associated with, I guess stars in, that Apple is not going to release as soon as they
said.
Their
next big film, which is called Emancipation, is a Will Smith film. I learned that from Richard Rushfield too. So there. It's not that I know all these things. Anyway, Michael Lynn pointed out the way that the Ukraine war has ended all the talk of civil war and warring tribes of red and blue, and pretty much everybody is behind Ukraine.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And we're, his point is we have no national identities. The only way we do it is by adopting the fight of another country, which we're not even allied with. But I don't think that's very fair, because if we had a national identity, we'd still be for Ukraine. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not sure everybody is as caught up in it as the people we hang out with one way or another, but
the split between the red and the blue,
there's
really not happening.
No real correlation. There's no, the Trump years had an effect on it. The Trump years, as I've said before, kind of guaranteed that Democrats with a capital D would be anti-Russia on this. I mean, they would have been anyway to some extent, but of course the Trump years turned them into, out and out Russia-phobes, a lot of them.
Right. In the Reagan years, it might have been different.
Might have been. Although, invading a country it seems pretty clear cut. It ranks up there with slapping a guy on the Oscars. Now. Yeah.
Anyway, we have a bunch of stuff to talk about in Ukraine.
Well, yeah. So, what's your take? So I guess, first of all, quickly, the one thing that happened, I think right after we taped last time, was Biden's off the cuff remark, right? We haven't talked about that.
No, we haven't. The gas.
My take on that is, first of all, do I think it's bad for him to say that he favors regime change, basically? Yeah, I think it's a tactical mistake, because for one thing, I think it makes regime change less likely. It makes, the more it looks like there's an American plot to depose him, the harder it will be in terms of Russia's domestic politics to depose him. Right. But that aside, what I think is the just almost criminal act on Biden's part is to just be improvising and freelancing on something of this moment. I mean, this is just malpractice. This is just not what, as I said on Twitter, what a capable president does. Now, sadly, we have actually had a series of presidents who did things like this lately. It's the kind of thing Trump did. And in fact, both Trump and Bush said things about, well, I'm not sure which Kim it was back in Bush's days, whether it was the same Kim, but, you know, they both said things you probably shouldn't say about somebody who's controls nuclear weapons and is thought to possibly be a little unstable anyway. So we've had kind of a run of presidents who weren't 100% professional in contexts like this, but I just think this is completely inexcusable, and it is more evidence that he should not be the candidate in 2024, and the Democrats need to get rid of him. It's complete malpractice.
I agree completely, but my take is, even if you take out the ad lib, the speech was way too strident. In other words, what we should be saying is, we support the Iranian people. Mr. Putin, end this war. We want them to cut a deal quickly and end the bloodshed on terms that the Ukrainians will accept. He said that that was halfway through the piece. He said, Mr. Putin, end this war. And then he went off on this Manichaean George W. Bush-like jag about how it's a long twilight battle between autocracies and democracies, and it's going to last, for our lifetimes, and this is a big deal. And this is, this tells Putin that even if you cut a deal now, we're not going to stop this war. It's a long twilight battle for generations, and we still hate you. And so why cut a deal? And it's just Biden sort of making a big deal of himself as the generational warrior. And this is what I was afraid of with Biden. He thinks he's JFK. He thinks he's, going to be the man to inspire the nation for generations. He's always tried to do that. And he tried to do it again. The whole speech was bad. And anyway.
I mean, the death struggle with autocracy is the blob line now. I mean, it's, everyone from neocons to liberal internationalists pretty much seem to think it's a great idea to frame foreign policy this way. I think it's a terrible way. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. There's actual evidence that doing this has helped drive China and Russia together, actual reporting in the Wall Street Journal. It's obvious that it would do that. And it's just, so much, it seems, of American foreign policy is actually just domestic political posturing. And I think it's as bad with this administration as with any. I mean, I really think that's fundamentally the way they're treating the Ukraine war generally, is how is this playing in domestic politics? What can I say today to seem at least as tough as the Republicans?
I keep getting, and also to erase the poll hit they took with the botched withdrawal from Afghanistan.
That put
everybody was
on
saying weak. Well, this is sort of gets rid of that, in theory, in their minds.
Yeah.
What the other interesting thing is, that he ad-libbed the last line, okay, but there was a last line written there. I mean, the last line in the speech isn't the one that's on there.
Oh, really?
So what is it's some inconclusive last line. You would never end a speech with, I mean, you can read the speech, you can see what it is. It's not a speech-ending line. So there was some line that was there that he didn't read.
So the actual last line
what was it? And I bet it's almost as bad as what he said.
It's probably like "only time will tell" or something.
Right. It's see you next week.
I don't know. As for the actual war, what was breaking last week, was when right before we taped, was the Russians scaling down their stated war ambitions. What it amounts to is, well, I think they do seem to have, I think a while ago, maybe they gave up on the idea of seizing and occupying Kyiv. But anyway, that now more than ever seems to be what's happened. And they're redeploying the troops they saved that way, the assets they saved that way, eastward. And the next goal is to try to encircle the Ukrainian troops in the Donbass, I guess.
As David Frum points out, he has a very, very optimistic, incredibly optimistic pro-Ukrainian view. They're not redeploying them to the east. They're redeploying them to Belarus, where they're being refueled and restocked and resupplied. And then they're going to go to the east. And that's a long schlep.
Well, there could be some truth to that. This guy, Michael Kaufman, who's become a star, every big crisis turns a couple of people who were specialists in that area into stars. And he had said, I don't know, close to a month ago, maybe, that within a few weeks, the troops were just not going to be able to sustain it. They were going to need to replenish. And he said he thought they might try to arrange a ceasefire or somehow make time for that. He seems to have gotten the timing about right. But I do think it's more than a rest and refresh. I think there is this redeployment. And that'll be kind of the next big battle, I guess. And I think today I saw a report that the Russians had taken Izium, which I think is a town of some significance in the encirclement gambit. They've been fighting there for a while. And I don't know, these things can go back and forth, but I guess that would be good news for Russia.
Do you buy the stories about this doughty group of people, of Ukrainians riding ATVs who go alongside the tank columns and destroy tanks? It's a great story. I'm sure.
I haven't seen the story. Well, what's the long? I mean, so they've got the shoulder fired weapons.
They got the shoulder fired weapons. They got drones. They have special programs they've written themselves to map the battlefield, and there are like 30 of them, and they've destroyed the 40-mile convoy.
And what's the
Russian
story?
tanks.
Like they're all grandfathers or something?
They're all tech. They're all high tech people who went into the military or something, and they were the Ukrainian military being just as stupid as our military. They'd originally been defunded, so and put out of business, and then at the last minute they realized, hey, we want these guys, and they turned the tide. In theory, it's a we happy few story. The other two interesting things is that it's so cold there that they leave the Russian tanks idling in the night, and that's a heat signature that then the missiles can zoom in on. And that also Tom Ricks pointed out that once you've decided your tank is a mobile coffin, you get out of it as soon as you can, and so you walk alongside the tank. You don't walk in the tank. You don't move in the tank, and that makes you all the more vulnerable. So,
I'm still waiting for these switchblades to get there. These, these American kamikaze drones. I think there's only 100 in the first shipment, but some people think they could be significant. I don't understand why they're only 100 actually, but there. And by the way, I think I had said last time, or a couple of weeks ago, I described them. I said there are two sizes of switchblades. One of them is so small, it's like 5 pounds. The launcher is like 2 feet long. And those can travel like 5 miles. Anyway, I think I said only the big one was a quote loitering munition. Technically, they're both loitering munitions. But
these people, these Ukrainians, in theory, built their own drones, including one that could drop a bomb.
Drop a bomb or a kamikaze? Seems like it'd be a lot easier to homebrew a kamikaze.
I don't know. It had a bomb. Maybe it was a kamikaze.
I think that would probably be the thing.
They're pretty smart, these Ukrainians.
But there is this whole issue of like, does the Biden administration have a plan in the sense of, is the plan to bleed the Russians slowly, which I think is a dubious plan for various reasons. And if it's not, why are there only 100 switchblades? Well, it's like
right, exactly. And I keep waiting. I think I mentioned this last week. Our commentator Laurent Ruzikas, if I'm pronouncing his name right, said there's a split in the blob, and there's a Biden blob that wants to have a short war with a deal, and there's this other blob that wants a long, drawn out war to bleed Putin and have a regime change. But who's on what side? I mean, we have you seen any reporting on who's arguing what, and why don't we see any reporting? And what's more, if the White House being so tightly closed that we don't find out anything, I think that makes them a cocoon. That's why they make these mistakes, because they don't like trot out. The reporter doesn't find out, hey, we're planning to give a strident speech in Poland and get any blowback for it, which might cause a course correction. They just they think it out amongst themselves and they unveil it to the world. It's much better if you leak and you get some feedback, I think, usually.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is. I think it would be a mistake to underestimate how long Russia will be willing to stay in this war, and to underestimate their aims. I mean, I was reading this thing, and I actually wrote it up for today's newsletter by Lawrence Friedman. That's his name, right? This kind of eminent military historian.
Right. He has a Substack called Comet is Freed.
Yeah, Freed. And he was saying that, if you look at the people who are, there are cracks in the kind of control of discourse in Russia. People are coming out, even on state media, and saying, wait a second, the story we've heard about this war isn't totally panning out. But he says you should not underestimate, you might think these are like anti-war people. No, a lot of them are the hardcore nationalists who are demanding that they go all the way and will settle for nothing less than the complete domination of Ukraine.
Okay.
And Putin faces a lot of that kind of domestic pressure. They already occupy, there's a couple of things. I mean, first of all, one thing people should realize is that, Mariupol, which it seems inevitably will fall, that is in the Donetsk province. So they need that, and they need a lot of other terrain they don't have yet, even to seize the two provinces that are the minimal formulation of their war aims, Donetsk and Luhansk. Now, they do already control some stuff outside of that, and I think people are talking as if, they'll readily give that up in the course of peace negotiations. If Lawrence Friedman is right, you might want to rethink how easy that's going to be.
There was a pretty revealing thread, I think it was linked by David Frum, of a guy in Russia describing the mood in Russia, and it's pretty patriotic. You can't in public express doubts about the war, and the general sentiment is it's like COVID. This will be over in a few months. We'll win in a few months, and that's the party line, and they haven't thought about what happens in a few months if they haven't won. But it's not necessarily going to go the peaceful way.
Go ahead.
Frum is wildly optimistic, and I want to read a tweet of his from a couple of days ago. At this point, the smartest play for Russia would be to take the L, surrender all its post-February 23rd takings in Ukraine, accept EU membership for Ukraine, and offer some symbolic reparation payment in exchange for Ukraine agreeing not to join NATO or host NATO bases.
Wait, did he say give up all of what they hold in the Donbass now?
All of its post-February 23rd taking. So if they had something pre-February 23rd, they could keep it.
It might be the smart move, but I think, and I hate to stereotype whole groups of people, but I do think it is characteristic of neocons not to understand the domestic political constraints working on the enemy, not to look at things from their point of view. And I don't think right now, I think Putin would have a lot of trouble getting away with that. I mean, remember that doesn't even meet his pre-war, his stated minimalistic, what he would call minimalistic aspirations to control the whole provinces of Donetsk and Luhansk.
Now, this is sort of an Al Pacino negotiation. Here's what I offer. Nothing.
Yeah. Well, right. But Frum doesn't mean it as an opening bid. He's serious. Like this is what he expects.
He has a very, very optimistic idea of how the war is going for Ukraine.
Well,
I don't know if he's cocooned or not.
In a way, I don't think that's crazy, at least in the sense that, look, it's gone way better than people expected. And the truth is, the U.S. has a very robust potential spigot, faucet or whatever the metaphor is, of arms flow that they could authorize. I mean, they're not giving Ukraine nearly all they would like. And what kind of scares me, especially with this slowly bleed them scenario, is the idea of Washington slowly turning it up and just slowly all hell breaking loose. I mean, today, as you know, probably, or yesterday, apparently these two Ukrainian helicopters crossed the border and blew up this Russian territory, well across the border, oil facility. And they're apparently not admitting they did it, but it's pretty clear they did it. I don't know why they're not admitting they did it.
So Chris Rock punches back. What's so terrible about that?
I'm not saying it's certainly not unwarranted. I mean, you're certainly justified if a country attacks you of attacking them. I'm just saying it's like nobody foresaw this. I'm just saying every day the war goes on, it can take a new direction. We don't know yet. I mean, I don't know what the logic was, because one thing you can imagine happening is Putin getting really pissed off and taking out 5 of your remaining oil facilities. On the other hand, you can imagine Ukraine, this being a shot across the bow. If they can credibly repeat this exercise, which I'm not sure of, then they may have meant it as a signal, like, quit blowing up our oil stuff. We can blow up yours, but you need to figure out, like, how does this play out?
Right.
Russia is acting as if it's going to impede peace talks.
Right.
I'm not sure how much momentum they had anyway.
Right.
And maybe that's why Ukraine is denying they did it, so that, I don't know.
Remember when that private pilot flew into Russia and went all the way to Red Square without being detected by Russian air defense?
I remember that vaguely, yes.
I just think one can overestimate the effectiveness of Russian air defenses.
Well, apparently there's a lot of things that were overestimated before this war.
I mean, this is the follow-up tweet from which reinforces your point. But of course, they won't take the loss. They will keep fighting, hoping to sustain the terror of Russian might and power until either that power utterly collapses or they back themselves into threatening nuclear war. Well, it doesn't seem like that's a good outcome. He doesn't say, and we will prevent the nuclear war by, X or Y. So the end game is not all that optimistic.
I agree. Nuclear war is a bad outcome, by the way. But yeah, I don't know how this is gonna play out. The peace talks don't seem to be proceeding very fast.
They don't. I mean, it seems to me they're proceeding apace. There's talk of a 15-year wait to join NATO. Well,
yeah, there's talk.
A long time.
There's talk. Well, no, it's not a 15-year wait to join NATO. No, the standard thing is NATO's off the table. There's 15 years to determine the final disposition of Crimea and I think the Donbass provinces. Yeah. But I don't know, how exactly does that work? That's a pretty vague formulation. There's also this thing Ukraine wants where... What's
a face-saving way to give it up?
Well, it could be, but how do they formulate the face-saving? I don't know. It can't be, that part can't be too transparent if it's going to save face. But another thing is Ukraine is saying, okay, we won't be part of NATO, but we want, in a way, the functional equivalent. We want other countries, ideally from their point of view, including the U.S., failing that, including, France and whoever. I mean, They mentioned Turkey, Israel, Germany, to guarantee that if we are attacked, they will come to our aid, even though they won't have troops in our country. It won't be like NATO. They won't have the right to put troops or pre-positioned weapons, I guess, but they will pledge to come to our aid. Well, who's going to pledge that? And how seriously is it going to be taken?
I was trying to figure out, and the allies the NATO was apparently very skeptical of that's basically a NATO-like guarantee without NATO.
Yeah,
and they're very skeptical of that. But it's hard to come up with. There must be some sort of half solution, but it's hard to come up with a half solution. I was thinking, what if we put 3 American troops in Ukraine, not enough to threaten Russia, but enough to act as a tripwire, but didn't have a formal guarantee. But obviously, if you overrun 3 American troops, or a number of American troops, we're going to be pissed off. I don't know. It would be like sort of hostages, like in Korea. I don't know.
I think the idea of any American troops in Ukraine would not be acceptable to Russia. But I don't know. And then there's the territorial disposition. That's very challenging. I mean, Russia is, going to be a lot of people in Russia who don't want Putin to give up any existing territory, outside of those 2 provinces even, and B, territory they occupy now, and B, they don't yet control the provinces. So it's like if they want to control the 2 provinces that Putin has already granted independence to, they need to do some more fighting. I mean, I don't think Ukraine is going to say, part of the deal is we're going to surrender the rest of those provinces. And if Russia doesn't control them, it's going to be super hard to sell this. So it seems to me you can't have a true peace deal now that freezes the fighting, enduringly.
Right, that's a good point. But the other issue is sanctions. Apparently, Russia expects the deal to involve us freeing them from sanctions. And that seems obvious that it would involve freeing them from sanctions. Why would that not be part of the deal? Because they have some troops in Ukraine, and until they're all leave, you can. That seems to be easy to finesse. You release the sanctions in stages, and when the final Russian troop leaves, all the sanctions are gone.
Yeah, no, that's our ace in the hole. I mean, I certainly don't imagine a scenario where we take all of the sanctions off, because Biden doesn't want to be accused of whatever he'd be accused of. If we do that, given that Russia is going to get to hang on to something they got through this invasion, probably. But yeah, in principle, that's a lot of leverage. The sanctions are hurting Russia. Prices are rising. They have succeeded.
Not as well as we thought they would.
Well, they have succeeded in quasi-stabilizing the ruble. And then there's this question of who's going to win this game of chicken between them and Europe over whether Europe needs to pay for Russian oil and gas.
I thought there are various ways that they were already finessing that.
Okay, but if they finesse it, Russia wins, and that in effect.
Right. I thought the finessing was sort of, it involved intermediary banks, or it was something very complicated.
I guess there's probably 2 ways to finesse it. But
did it shore up the ruble? I don't know.
Right. Somebody has to lose. It either will or it won't.
Yeah. Well, that's all I have to say about Ukraine, I think. I do think the press is now a little sympathetic to Biden, because despite all his incredibly poor performance, and there were like 4 gaffes. There weren't just 3. There was.
You mean in the one speech?
No, in this whole trip, there were 4 major gaffes.
Oh, really? We should.
I forget what the 4th one was, but there was I'll look it up. There was him telling the 82nd Airborne, when you're in Ukraine, you will notice people standing in front of tanks. That was just a brain glitch, but it was a pretty bad.
No, but that was I'm sorry. I mean, that this has been a thing with me. I've been worried about his cognitive health since before he was elected, and I don't think it's nothing. I thought now I admit I have not seen the full context of that video, but it's a weird thing to say. What he said was, well, when you're over there, you'll see these brave, it's like, wait, they're not going over, Joe.
And there's no reality in which if they went over there, they would see people in front of tanks. If they went over there, they'd be fighting a war, and the people would not be standing in front of tanks. They'd be cowering in their basements.
Yeah, but that is standard politician bullshit, I think, kind of. I can see that, but acting as if they're he seemed to briefly think that they were heading there. That's an alarming
I'm not clear on that
thing.
He might have just been saying, if you go over there, and instead of saying, if you go over there, if one went there, you said, when you're there. That part, I think, can be,
I mean, at a minimum,
a minor brain glitch.
At a minimum, a president in top working condition just doesn't say things that are that ambiguous, right? Like they're thinking that clearly, like, no, this could be misinterpreted. At a minimum, I'd say that, but I fear the glitch was a little more serious than that.
I think the press is now going easy on Biden because they know the alternative is Kamala Harris at the moment, and they know that she would be worse. So they're not, and they're worried. For example, if you ask Biden a question about Hunter Biden in a press conference, Hunter's guilt is becoming increasingly plausible. They're discovering payments from Chinese people directly into his bank account. They're not very big payments, only $100,000. That's sort of an aperitif. It
adds up.
That's sort of an aperitif in the lobbying business. But but Biden, they're worried that Biden will just go berserk because he's never acknowledged any wrongdoing on Hunter's part. He always explodes when you ask him. He just lies about it, and they're worried that he'll self-destruct, and then we're stuck with Kamala. So I don't think they're asking that question.
Maybe that's why. I mean, also there's a little bit of a wartime mentality, even though we're not in the war.
Well, that's the same deal. It's the same. That dovetails.
Yeah, but it's like the way you don't criticize your leader during a war unless the war starts going really bad.
No, but they both point in the same direction.
Yeah. But there's slightly different dynamics. In other words, even if there were a vice president they liked, they would still be taking it easy on Biden right now, I think.
Right.
Which is too bad because the Democrats, I'm sorry, they need to, shortly after the midterms, make it clear that there's going to be competition for the presidential nomination in the party. And I don't know how they make that clear if he's not the one who makes it clear. I mean, in other words, if he doesn't go out gracefully, I don't know how that happens.
Well, because after the whoever's the official nominee, whether it's Biden or Kamala, people declare against them and they beat them. I mean, and the press has to cover that, and the press won't show Biden any mercy at that point. At that point, it'll be a free-for-all.
But I think the press will have to kind of decide to turn that into an issue. It's a very awkward thing for politicians to challenge a sitting, an incumbent of their own party.
To Gene McCarthy.
Yeah, but that was like Vietnam was wild. That was a wilder. Well, it's a good question. Was it a wilder, all told, political climate?
Look, you have, we were talking about elite overproduction last week. You have 50 senators. They all want to be president. It's obviously in some of their interests to take the risk and challenge the sitting president. They can't all be president. So some of the people have to take the riskier course. And those people may be rewarded or they may not be rewarded, but somebody's going to do it.
But I think it helps if the media cooperate. Like the media has the power to change it from a will someone challenge Biden question to a who are the people who will challenge Biden question, right? They can do that through the framing, the questions they ask on the Sunday talk shows. That's what they need to do. That's what we want.
They'll do that right after the election, and the voters hate Biden. They're not going to vote for Biden. Okay, they're going to vote for an alternative. I mean,
well,
he's
in
the
Democratic,
30s.
He's in the 30s, but that still leaves room for a majority support in the Democratic Party. Those are the voters that matter in a primary.
True, but they also could be, standing up for the party when the pollster calls, and in the actual primary, when they have an alternative who's also a Democrat, they might change their mind. Keep in mind, anyway, Biden Biden never won primaries until Jim Clyburn handed him South Carolina. So it's not like there's this enduring support for him the way there is in the Republican Party for Trump.
No, I'm not saying there's a ton, but I'm just, you seem to think it's just inevitably going to happen that there's a serious challenge in a true primary free-for-all. I don't think that's a given. I hope you're right. I don't see why you would think it's a given.
The press would be so bored. You mean Kamala Harris sort of slowly, stately procession to victory over the 2 years? That's not going to happen.
No. No. You're misunderstanding what I'm saying. I'm not even assuming that. I'm
assuming Biden will run.
Right. Exactly. That's what we have to stop. We have to stop, first of all, because he's very likely to lose to Trump in a general election. When I say we, I don't mean you and me. I mean me and my compatriots who believe exactly what I believe, which means a total of like 3 people in the country. But anyway, speaking for the other 2, let me say we need to keep Biden from running because he will he has a good chance of losing to a nominee who may be Trump. And I just think that's an existential issue. Country cannot take 4 more years of Trump. So we got to do something.
That's another reason to help Biden succeed, because if he can go out on a high note, he's more likely to go out, right?
You mean help him succeed politically over the next year? Yeah, but then the more successful he gets, the more likely he is to want to run again.
It's a fine line.
It's kind of like trying to micromanage the Ukraine war, like you don't.
The tightrope.
Yeah.
Okay, good point.
Which is, by the way, a real challenge with Ukraine. It's like the more you give them, the bigger their aspirations, and the more political pressure their president is to not give up anything.
Right.
This is
the one line that I don't quite understand is if we want to deal in Ukraine, somehow we're pressuring Zelensky. Not necessarily. He's going to make the call. And the idea that it's unfair to say we want to deal because we're sitting on Zelensky seems crazy. It's wildly oversensitive.
We do have leverage in the sense that
we have leverage, and that goes with the territory. Welcome to the big leagues. But
I mean, for example, here's one question: is like, suppose these switchblades prove very effective, and he wants 1,000 more. Do we at that point say, like if it turns out that they're almost transformational, which they probably won't quite be, but just imagine there's some combination of weapons we could give him that would make a very big difference. Okay, so imagine that weapons package, and do we say, okay, we will give it to you, but you've got to settle for X, Y, and Z at the negotiating table. Okay, you can't suddenly decide you're going to roll things back all the way to the Russian border because Putin won't take that. We'll have war forever. I mean, I wonder if it gets that explicit.
I don't know. That's why I'm not in the blob. Supposedly half the blob wants to settle, according to, who knows? The blob is not necessarily monolithic.
Not on every issue, no.
Yeah. If you want to give, I'm transitioning here. If you want to give Biden a victory, I have one. Before the midterms, I have one word for you, Bob.
What is that word?
One name.
What is that name?
Mitt Romney. You're looking for somebody who might defect from the Republicans to endorse a reconciliation bill if it's watered down enough.
Wait, you're saying? Okay, wait. I don't.
If Romney votes for reconciliation, crosses the aisle to vote for reconciliation.
Yeah.
Nobody needs Joe Manchin. Manchin is redundant. Nobody has to do what Manchin says. You have to please Romney. If I were Mitch McConnell, I would really worry that Romney would defect because he opposed the original Build Back Better bill, which is huge and deficit increasing under his lights, et cetera, et cetera. But if you water it down enough, and in particular, Bob, what worries me, if you give Romney the refundable child tax credit that he wants, he might vote for it and say, it would get him a lot of good press as the maverick who, helped the American government function. And he's treacherous and self-interested in that way. And I worry that Romney is going to defect and give Biden a huge victory.
Well, worry is the word. I think you lie awake at night worrying about ways that a child tax credit could get passed. And this is your latest nightmare, but the fact is it's not likely at all. But I don't know. I don't
think it's not likely. The only thing that's stopping it at this point is time. They're going to run out of time. The path is clear.
The Romney solution is nigh.
Well, if you assume that Romney is as slithery as I think he is, if he's going to hold out for his original child tax credit, which also involved, eliminating welfare and eliminating the state and local tax deduction, then no, but I don't think he'll stick to that.
Okay.
So I've actually done some little bit of reporting on that. So I think I'm right to be worried.
Okay.
So I have 2 other major topics.
Well, we've got about 5 minutes. Maybe you should wait. Tell me which ones they are, and I'll recommend which one to save for the Parrot Room.
If COVID is fading, why are all my friends suddenly getting COVID?
Yeah, I felt like I was getting it yesterday. If COVID is fading, what's the other one?
The other one is that this seems to be the year in California where race not race preferences, but eliminating the SAT and going holistic and pressing for diversity and screwing over the Asians with high test scores. That shit has finally hit the fan. And students who study hard at good schools, whose parents pay a lot of money, or go to a good Catholic school that traditionally sends, half of its graduates into the UC system, which is still considered pretty good in California. They're tearing their hair out because none of them are getting in anymore. They're totally fucked over, and there's going to be some backlash, I think, but I don't know what form it takes. I don't know what they can do, but it's a dramatic change in the actual lives of anybody with kids in the California education system, and it's going to be replicated across the nation, and the backlash will be something to behold.
Well, it sounds like we're saving COVID for the Parrot Room because you just did that. I will say
I just did COVID too.
We can drag that out a little more, but I will say that the MIT apparently has restored standardized testing, which they had gone a couple of years without.
Right, and you like that, right? I like it.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I just don't see what other, how otherwise. I don't know what the criteria become, except for various forms of bullshit criteria, including who you know and how well connected you are. And I mean, a hobby horse of mine is, and I've taught at the college level. I'm not really, credentialed academic, but I've taught at several different institutions of higher learning, several different kinds of courses, not like journalism courses. And the thing that if I were an admissions officer, I would most like to see, it is any piece of writing that the student actually wrote. I mean, these essays, when you're evaluating one of these admissions essays, the question is just, well, how much help did their parents give them with it? Or did they actually hire someone to help them with it? It's just total bullshit. You have no fucking idea. And here is the irony. This would be the most valuable thing about the SATs. Here's the irony. The SAT, until very recently, included an essay, and now it was bullshit in the sense that the SAT people actually graded the essay. Well, that's stupid. To give some kind of standardized objective grading to an essay is stupid. But what they had by virtue of having an essay question is an actual specimen of writing that the student had done. Now, if I'm an admissions officer, that's to me, that's more valuable than anything else. Because I mean, especially if you're a professor and you're frustrated with the quality of writing from the average student. I mean, if and I think ETS gave the colleges the option of just looking at the essays if they want to, but for reasons that totally elude me, the colleges didn't take them up on it. I don't know why.
Too much work.
Yeah, but maybe, but you could at least have it there to look at in cases where you're trying to decide between two.
Right, it'd be a good tiebreaker. Yeah.
And it's like, as it is, the whole process is just designed to help these privileged kids who may or may not have actual talent. It's very hard to say. Well, especially if you take the standardized test away.
So was your essay good? I thought your test scores were just good.
Me personally?
Yeah. Would you have been able to write an essay in high school that impressed them the way your test scores did?
Well, I wrote.
I know test scores pulled you out of Texas into the big leagues, right?
Well, it's a little complicated because I transferred. I spent a year at TCU and then transferred. Okay. But I wrote an admissions essay. Not the SAT didn't include an essay back then.
Right. Okay.
But I wrote an actual admissions essay, and I actually wrote it because I came from the kind of family where my parents were like, "Remind me where you're applying to college." It just wasn't, it wasn't. No, seriously, their only thing was they didn't want it to be outside of Texas. That was it.
I wrote my own essay. It was a moving testimony of how I admired Doug Hammarskjöld's writings more than. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
That sounds like
Litany
your
of
parents.
falsehoods.
Sounds like your parents wrote that. Mine was so pedestrian.
Total bullshit.
My transfer essay was just about how much I like to exercise. That was actually it.
I like Virginia Heffernan said she didn't get into Princeton because her essay was an attack on the Special Olympics.
Never get mixed up between your Princeton application and your Slate application. You remember when Andrew at a New Republic editorial meeting actually proposed to take down of the Special Olympics?
No, but I assume that's possible. I assume I don't know exactly what the argument would be, but
right. But I was like, I remember. Well, we can talk about it in the Parrot Room. What else are we going to talk about in the Parrot Room, Mickey?
You only allow me 5 things. Okay.
You can have 6 because I don't think I have 5. But
what is COVID, and do I want to take the 4th shot? You could tell me. One is there was a contribution on the Bob Saget saga from one of our listeners that I think moved the ball forward. There's Eric Schmidt taking over huge chunks of the government by funding actual government employees.
This is the former Google guy, Eric Schmidt.
Yeah. There's do we want to really send these unless this was an April Fool's joke, and I don't think it was, send these messages to outer space saying, hey, here's what we look like, and here's where we are. So why don't you come and...
Are you afraid they'll send drones and blow us up?
They'll send knives and forks. They'll send setups and plates. And with this picture of this nice tasty man and woman.
To serve man.
There are other things we could talk about. There's Eric Garcetti's nomination to be ambassador to India going down in flames because of indirectly a sex harassment allegation, not on his part, but on one of his aides' part. He was harassing men and women. It made no sense at all. But I shed no tears. Have I had 5 yet? There's a bunch of other little things. There's always the French election. Always. A bunch of big elections coming up. The France and a Pakistani no confidence vote and Viktor Orban in Hungary. Do I want him to win or do I want him to lose? I think I want him to lose. But we could talk about that.
Okay. Let's see. What will I talk about? Well, as long as we're talking about Bob Saget, we could talk about the Foo Fighters drummer. I don't have much to say though. He died.
It wasn't just a standard rock death of a guy who took a lot of drugs.
Well, that's my question though. Which drugs? The blood tests that I've read about seem at odds with I don't think there's anything suspicious going on. It just seems like they weren't. Anyway, I might as well say something about that. I will say more about Vladimir Putin. I've progressed further in this biography. I'm almost done with the biography. I don't mean I wrote it. I mean I read it or listened to it. I want to talk more about the Oscars because I have 2 theories you probably haven't heard of about what was going on in Will Smith's head. I have 2 that I hope original theories. One of which draws on inside information from an entertainment industry insider. It's informed by that information. And I think it's not a bad theory.
I think I have a similar theory too.
I doubt the theories are the same. I think the entertainment industry insider is the same, and we can talk about all this.
Okay.
And I might want to just reconstruct the whole for people who have not gotten enough of Chris Rock, Will Smith. It was just so bizarre trying to make sense of it. I want to talk about how bizarre it was trying to make sense of it in real time. I happened to be actually watching Uncharacteristic.
I don't think it was that bizarre. But anyway, okay, you can explain to me why it's bizarre. The other obvious thing we haven't talked about is the January 6th investigation and Trump's phone records not being not having anything in them for 7 hours, and did he buy a bunch of burner phones, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you know more about that than I do.
Not very much, but I'll know more by the time the Parrot Room starts. How about that?
Okay, I guess that's it. There was.
I have a larger point.
About
I don't know anything about it, but I have a larger point.
About what?
About Trump's phone record.
Okay. There was at the last minute on Twitter, there popped up this what the Russians with attitude guys are saying is new evidence of false flagism at the maternity hospital. But I defer to my wife on this because she so I've sent her the tweet and I will consult with her in the meanwhile, because I don't even understand what the theory is exactly. There apparently is some woman who's gone to Russia and either was or wasn't one of the women and is saying things about it. But this may be nothing by the time I consult with my wife. It probably will be nothing. So never mind. But I do want to, yeah, that's probably enough.
If any readers know how to take off makeup,
yeah,
DM me.
Doesn't it have to do with cold cream or something?
It is something. I some are water soluble, some are not. I don't know. Anyway, I may reappear. I may have makeup smeared all over my face. Who knows?
If we have time, I may get into this minority theory about Ukraine, where, according to which, what's happening was exactly the Russian plan all along, and the troops near Kyiv were just doing a feint to tie up Ukrainian troops.
Is this the Bret Stephens theory?
Not exactly. It's kind of well, actually, Glenn Greenwald and Michael Dougherty kind of nodded in its direction. The person who's actually articulated it is Scott Ritter. But I mean, he's the only one with anything like expertise in this realm who has articulated it.
Finding out what Michael Dougherty thought about the war was on my list of to-do things that I didn't get to do. So you can tell me.
I can tell you a little of what he said lately. Yeah. All
great.
right. So we will see it. So this is a patreon.com/Parrot Room. You want to hear all of these things and more, plus see the parrot.
Plus so much more.
Exactly.